Hey friends, welcome back. Surprised at how different, but yet how much the same they were. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna talk a little bit about their price points, how they lay down, as far as one versus the other, accessibility, open stock, all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to pull out these first and give you a brief little overview of these really quickly. Just a little overview, real quick. These are the iCrayons. Each set comes in a set of 12 and a set of 25, which is this set. I highly recommend just going ahead. It was like $26 for these, which is dollar crayon and maybe a little tax. I don't know what it is in like Australia or the United Kingdom. I would recommend just getting these. It does come with the little water soluble brush, which I have here. Ta-da. And the little sharpener, which is really cool. Neo's didn't come with this fun stuff. So they also come with this, which the Caran Neo 2s did not. This section is what you're going to use to sort of, if you want to do the pigment off directly, like I'll show you real quick. Versus trying to do it this way. Do you see the difference? How much do you see the difference between here and there? These rough bumps kind of pull the pigment off the crayon a little better. And this is for, I guess, when you want to mix things, maybe. I don't know. Either way, I thought it was kind of cool. I used these a little bit in the video, so that review that I did for these. So please check that out. It's a good video. And any comments or suggestions you have to make, just be nice. So that's kind of what these look like. This is the classic section, and this is the Europe section. They're all labeled really like with European things, historical sites. I'll show you in the back real quick. See, these are some of the reference photos that they used for their color palette. Like one of these is some cathedral in Germany, Cologne, I think. I hope I pronounced that right. There's a place in Edinburgh, UK, Trinity College in Ireland. Let's see, Lake Halstead. I hope I said that, in Australia. That looks beautiful, but you get the idea. So that's pretty unique. And then these are just your standard, like colors like violet and whatnot. I wish there was a little bit more grays. There's like a couple of cool grays, but there's really no warm grays other than maybe this one a little bit. It's black, but it's a warm black. And yes, there's a difference. There's warm black and cool black. Like lamp black and ivory black are your warm and your cool blacks. So there's that. And then we have and you can see I'm actually missing a couple because I was just using these recently. And you can see that they've been well used and well loved. I love these things. It was one of the best things I've ever bought in my life. They are definitely more expensive. The Neo 2s, oh, hold on, I'm sorry. Let me show you the other part. Ta-da. They come in, let's see, according to my info, they come in several different counts, way more than the iCrayon. They come in a 10 count and this was just off of Amazon, like a 10 count for 22, a 15 count for about 33, rounding it up, 30 count for 67 and some change, 40 count for 95 and some change, essentially 96. And then the full price set is about $226, $227. And this is just off of Amazon. Now, iCrayon I could not find anywhere but Amazon. So because it comes from Shanghai, China. They do come. The Neo 2s are available on Blick. I think Jerry's Artorama has them. I don't really go to Jerry's Artorama that much. Mostly Blick and Amazon are my two main places that I go. Blick, according to Blick, they have the 10 count for 32 and some change, about almost exactly what Amazon's asking. So it's not much cheaper, and you still with Blick you have to order a certain amount, or you get charged for shipping. And oh, one little heads up, just a little quick rabbit trail. Be careful when you order from Blick, because you will have to pay to send stuff back. Like, there's no free return shipping. Big heads up. So make sure that you really want what you have, or be prepared to pay to send it back. That's, I think, BS. And it frankly really upset me when I found that out. I was kind of mad. Pay again for something that you don't want, or can't use, whatever. So just be careful. It's really what you want before you get it, or be prepared to send it back. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm not dinging Blick. They are a great company. Their customer service is great, but that is the one thing that absolutely, it's just not cool. So, having said that, their prices really are very similar to Blick in all the 30 count, 40 count. The only big difference, really, it's about $10, give or take, is the 84 count, which is the full price, or the full set, and it's like $217.88, which is pretty decent. So that's actually a little bit cheaper, and you'll get free shipping with an order like that. So I would recommend getting these off of Blick. This is something you will not return these, I guarantee you. And you can tell which ones I've used the most too. Like, you can see, right? So these are absolutely amazing. They do. I almost forgot to mention. Hold up. Their country of origin is Switzerland. They're made in Switzerland. They're most of their they source most of their materials and things like that in-house or in country, which is really phenomenal. There's, I think, a few pigments that they outsource for, but the majority of, and I learned this doing my research, if you look up my review that I did for either, I think it was either the watercolor pencils or the water soluble crayons, I kind of talk a little bit about that. It's really cool. They do most of their stuff in-house. It's just a phenomenal thing. Several things. One, the Caran is available in open stock. Also available in more, you can get it in more places. Okay, and I find that nice. I can go to, like I said, Blick, Amazon. I'm sure that they're on Jerry's Artorama, probably Etsy, although I would steer clear of Etsy just because I'm a little unhappy with some things that are going down with Etsy these days. But you're probably going to pay a little bit more on Etsy, just because it's individual people wanting to, make a little money off of it, which is totally understandable. I'm not knocking it, but that's just something to consider. They might jack the price up a little bit so that they can make a profit. These are I only saw these on Amazon. So what I thought I would do is talk to you guys a little bit about the differences. What I'm going to do is talk to you about and show you a little bit some of the differences in the way they layer, in the way they pick up from the crayon, the way they pick up from a palette, stuff like that. So I'm going to put these aside for a minute and I'll show you the... Oh, and FYI too, these, I did not see that these came in open stock anywhere. So that's just something to consider. But for $1 crayon, it's like what before Black Widow pencils became available in open stock. I would just buy a new set of whatever pencil that was in, and then just store the extra crayons for whenever I ran out of the other ones. So you can, that's what I would recommend if you really want to get these. So this is what I printed out. It's from Punto Box on Etsy. I really did like what I saw from them. $3 or $4, and they're really simple, and I like that because, especially when I'm doing demonstrations like this, because I can then use my kneaded eraser, which I highly recommend if you're gonna do that. And you go over the ink from it printing, and then you go over it with a micron pen like this because they're water resistant. And it doesn't have to be this brand, but you need to make sure that it's the kind that says water resistant or waterproof or something like that. And then I go over it, and it's much easier to go over something like this than it is something super complicated. And with something simple like this, you can do it up however you want. So, you know, you can make it more complicated or leave it as is. That's why I feature large print coloring books a lot. And please see that I've done several book hauls with just large print coloring books. Please look those up. They're really great, most of them. So what I thought I would do is play around with this a little bit, kind of let you see the differences between them. They do layer differently. Let's see. I think I'm going to stick with the classic because I really, honestly, the Europe ones, the colors are just not really gonna work for this, because this is a 4th of July pick, since it's pretty close to 4th of July. It's just about another week maybe here. So I thought this was kind of appropriate. And the classic color box is gonna have more of what I need. So I'm gonna pull this out. And I have my Caran palette, which I'm gonna use instead of this. Although I might use that just to show you guys in this video how it's done. I highly recommend, if you're gonna do like straight from like this, for example, let me grab the right color. What am I doing? Okay, I might actually use the blue from the other box. Hold on. I'm gonna use I don't see blues in this box that I like. So I'm gonna actually use this blue from the Europe box. So I don't see really any dark blues other than this one, but these two will mix very nicely. These are, this one says, and I cannot pronounce it, but it's, oh my gosh. Okay, guys, I'm just going to show you. There you go. I have no idea. It's some lake in Europe. I don't know. Oh, please don't roast me. And this one is ultramarine. So I'm going to use these two and possibly this one for my light. I have my white. And I'm going to do a blue section with these. Oh, and if you're going to not do it directly from the crayon, you can use this side if you're just like picking it up like watercolor type deal. You could do it that way. But this side, if you feel it, you can feel it's a little rougher. And I may have to replace this palette because I've noticed in places it's gotten a little smooth, because if I take the crayon and I do this and it doesn't do this immediately and it just kind of slides over it like it's this side. Please excuse the light ring flat glare, I'm sorry. That means it's kind of getting worn down and you need to replace your palette. So I'm going to pull this, do some of this. And as you can see, these iCrayons are, you know, they're coming down pretty nicely. They do come off the crayon very well on the palette. So that's a bonus point in their favor. And I believe this color is light blue. Much easier than trying to pronounce this one from the Europe set. While showing you guys how they layer, I also thought I'd show you how different brushes can affect your result. So one thing is with these crayons, the iCrayons, is they tend to be a little slower to dissolve. Oh, and one other thing, when you're doing stuff like this, try to have something like this handy. It really does come in handy. These are hand towels, and I swear they're like paper towels on steroids. So when you're using a brush like this, it's much easier to, let's push this out of the way. It's much easier to just drop the water in. Make sure you go. I'm going to do this top one, and I've let the ink dry, by the way, too. When you go back over it with your microphone, make sure you let it dry. It doesn't take very long. But I'm gonna drop some water on each. This is the beauty of having the watercolor brush, is you can just drop it on like you're dropping water into the water. Like this is how I get my watercolor palettes wet. I don't use a spray bottle. I just drop them in like this with a dropper or a brush like this. Let that set. If you get these crayons, and I'm not unrecommending them, but you need to give it a minute to just sort of work on it. Let the water work on the pigment. They are very much slower to dissolve. The pigments don't break up as easily as the Neo 2s. And I will do another one of these with the Neos, and you'll see what I mean. But I've let that set for a minute, and I could do like a wet on wet, but I'm just using mixed media paper here. And honestly, you got to be careful when you're doing when you have mixed media paper. It can take a lot more water than, like, say, sketch paper, but not as much as full-on watercolor paper. So I tend to not do wet on wet as much with this kind of paper. And also because I did sort of, you know, print it out and whatnot, sometimes the wet on wet can break through the micron ink a little bit even. So that's just my reasoning for that. But as you can see over here, that it's dissolved pretty easily because I let it sit and I let it just work on it for a bit, instead of trying to pick it up immediately. And so my highlights are going to kind of be this way, so that's why I'm kind of pushing the ink that way. It may bleed a little. Yeah, I can tell it is a little bit anyway. If that happens, just grab your because sometimes it's not waterproof ink, proof, it's just resistant. If that happens, just do that, and then make sure you clean your brush. It's not a big deal. It can be worked around. Okay, there we go. See, ta-da! That's the biggest thing. Just catch it. That's why I say have these or a clean rag handy. You won't regret it. They're really awesome to have. And just go back over it a little bit and it'll stop bleeding like that because you've gotten the rest of the ink off. It doesn't like make it smear proof. It just makes it less so. So now I'm going to grab and you see how the iCrayon is dissolving pretty nicely still, even with the blue. And I'm going to go back over that and just let it kind of This is going to be all in the lighter side of things. And to see how I'm taking it from the palette here and I'm just kind of going over that way. And if it smears, I just kind of go like that with my brush and then wipe it on here and you should be good to go. Let's do this quickly and then we'll go on to the Neo and I'll show you guys the Neo. Now this is getting into a little wet on wet, but not as much as if I had laid it down like initially, like that. It would have been much worse. Okay. I'm just gonna let that kind of light blue, but I don't have a whole lot of it. If it dries up like that, just kind of go like what I'm doing right here, how you see that I'm just kind of swirling to sort of blend it in. And then the water will do the rest of the work. Now this may have dried a little, so if you, depending on how long you've gone in between, but you can see hopefully from here that it's picking it up pretty well, but not as well as when it was more saturated. And that's why I'm just kind of waiting a second to give the pigment time to catch up. It definitely does not dissolve as cleanly or quickly as the Neo 2s. That is a given. That's one of my biggest takeaways from this was they definitely do not dissolve the same. However, having said that, again, for $1 a crayon, if you're a beginner or you're just on a tight budget and you don't have the resources, as many of us don't these days. Now, one thing you're going to see is that I'm not quite going to the edge full on, because eventually that's going to, depending on how tilted my table is. So, one other thing I'm going to do real quick, because I need to do this. If you want to blend, watch. I don't know if you guys can see what I'm doing here, but and you see how it's generally sticking within the areas that are wet. So this is a review and comparison, but it's also a little tutorial about, how to use Welsh solid blue crayon. So it's kind of you're getting a twofer. There. And you see how it's sliding around and it's largely staying within the boundaries of how I set things. Isn't that cool? You just kind of look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Now, having said that, before I continue on, I'm going to show you a little bit how these crayons. I'm actually going to do this a little bit more. Sorry, I'm going to add a little more here because it's not deep enough for me. There we go. Okay. And that's how you do this. Tell when the pigment starts to get pushed away too far from where I'm dropping it. You see how it's collecting at the ends here? That means the paper is starting to buckle a little bit. So this is the kind of brush I recommend. Not necessarily the shape per se, but this is a mixed media brush. It's like what would be labeled all-purpose, that kind of thing. And the reason I say that is because if you have a full-on watercolor brush, which is what this is, especially if you're picking up from the crayon, it's not going to pick up the same, and it's just not going to work as well because the bristles are too soft. So that's why I pulled this up to show you. I'm going to actually do something. Watch this. If you have too much water, by the way, as a side note, and this will work for the iCrayon and the other one, and you get like some hard lines there, just take a dry brush that's, at least all-purpose, and just kind of go like what I'm doing right here, and this will get rid of those hard edges. You have to be careful. Like here I'm kind of messing with things a little bit. So I'm gonna get my crayon and I'm gonna show you what it's like to pick up right from the crayon. Now this is something that is definitely different than the Neo 2s because it does not pick up as easily. It does, but you have to work a little harder at it. So you guys can see, it's just easier to do this than it is to zoom in my camera. So if you can see that, it does come off, but you have to work. You see how if this was a Neo 2, it would have already picked it up by now, way ahead of this. So I mean, it does. It just, as you can see, it's finally starting to pick it up. So there we go. It just, you have to work a little harder at it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not like knocking it per se, but because this is still wet, I might actually be able to go back in this. Make sure your brush is wet. It's not like dripping wet per se. You want to do this and have it not like completely just run straight off of it. Okay, that's bad. But you want a little bit more than that. So I'm going to dip it in, and then I'm going to dip and drag, as I call it, the dip and drag. Dip, drag. You definitely want to do that, or you'll just have all that running straight down, and it might be more than you want. So see what I mean, though? I had to go back in because it still wasn't enough. And this also is a very transparent color, by the way. I believe it's the ultramarine. It's a very transparent color. So, oh, okay, that's not working. Hold on. There we go. The problem is that it's already started to dry a little. That's why it's doing that. Just to let you guys know, that's kind of why it's doing that, is because it's already started to dry a little. And then you go back in, clean your brush off, and just make sure you dry it on the napkin, and just kind of go like that. Ta-da! That will get rid of those annoying little lines and stuff. See? Ta-da! So it does work with these, but it's just a little bit harder. And again, I don't recommend a straight watercolor brush. It doesn't have the stiffness of the bristles, but I wouldn't use an acrylic brush either. That's why this is kind of that happy medium. However, my best bet for this, though, is still this. Especially when you're not doing smaller areas like that, I would probably use a regular brush because I can control the water a lot better. But when you're doing larger areas like this, I recommend this. So what I'm going to do now is do another one with the Neo 2s, and you'll see the difference right here. Sapphire blue, that works. And no, not indigo. Indigo is very purple. You don't want indigo. Prussian's very green. Oh, night blue. Night blue is one of my favorite colors. It is such a good dark blue to use for when you're trying to make like shadow colors like this. Such a great color. We need our lighter blue. There we go. And where's my white? All right. So you see how I don't have to work as hard to lay this down. I'm barely pushing. Get my lighter. I probably should have spread that out a little more, but hey. And I think there's my medium. As a side note, side subject, you always want to have three. They call it the rule of three. Okay. Your light, your medium, and your dark. And in my case, I like to have white or black too, but light, medium, dark. If you want the full effect, that's how that works. So you're going to see something right off the bat. I'm going to close this and move this out of my way. You're going to see something that's going to blow your mind. The difference between the iCrayon and this. Look how easily. I don't even need to really drop my water on this, but I can. I'm going to just a little. You won't need as much. My music's a little loud. All right. All right. That should work. Now, I'm going to grab my light. You see how that's dissolving? Just, I barely touched the water brush to it. Didn't even squeeze hardly any water. And you see how it just instantly dissolved, right? Instantly. And I'm going to bring out my iCrayon and I'm going to show you. Hold on. You guys got to see this. Like, I think, make sure this, yeah. This is my iCrayon. Okay, yeah. And they're very similar too. That's another thing to note. Hold on. Do you see how similar? This one's kind of chewed up. Might not be the best, except it's been well loved. But do you see how they're very similar? They even have the little things tabs to pull off for when as you're using it up. They're very, very similar. They've kind of copied it quite a bit. So that's just something to be noted of. But I'm going to show you guys. Watch this. Let me rinse my thing off real quick. Watch this. Do you see how I've had to drop that in? I've had to wait, and it's still not fully activated. It's getting there, but do you see how much longer it took? Like, and that's kind of how it looks on the paper. I'll clean my brush off, and let's grab the iCrayon. I mean the Neo 2. I mean, they're not exactly the same color, but still. You see how creamier it is? That's the other thing that I want to mention too, is the difference in like the creaminess. How pigmented they are. I mean, you could, even though they're different in color, you can definitely see the difference in the creaminess here. Let's get the Neo here. And then where's my equivalent of the iCrayon? So we have the Neo on the left, and then we have the iCrayon on the right. This is going directly from, as you saw, from the crayon to the paper, which is another thing in of itself. You see how I had to push much harder for the iCrayon to get it to come out, and I also deliberately used more. Well, watch, this is gonna blow you guys' minds. Okay, this is the, look at that. Just instantly dissolves, right? Instantly. Just look at that, and it's fully dissolved in a matter of about 2 seconds. All of it, right? Check that out. Now I'm gonna rinse my crayon, and you're gonna see something. This is why I don't recommend sketching with the iCrayons. Like, if you're gonna draw something and then, you know, use it as like an outline, that's fine. But if you're gonna try and sketch with them, and then, you know, like I do my watercolor pencils, that's a whole nother thing. Let me know if you wanna talk about that. Watch this. Check this out. I'm gonna bring this up. Look at the difference. Look at that. Do you see what I mean? Look at that. Do you see how hard I'm having to work? I'm having to let it rest, and sort of like I did on the palette. But look at that. I was like, what? So if you wanted to, you know, like do something like this here. We're going to go down a little rabbit trail because this is important. If you're going to do something like that, use the iCrayon, and then take your Neo 2 and fill it in with the Neo 2, like this. Or what other wet media you want to use. It doesn't have to be that. I'm going to rinse my brush. Watch this. Pretty color. And this will blend and it will dissolve some, but it'll still hold its shape. It's dissolving, but it's not completely dissolving. It's dissolving just enough to sort of, look at that. That is what I would recommend if you're, kind of messed that up. Watch this though. Now, ultramarine is very staining, so you're never going to get rid of it completely, but you might get rid of it enough that if you let it dry, you can just kind of go, you know, go back over it. So, but look how cool that is. It's one thing if you're going to directly go to the paper, use your iCrayon as the outline. And then whatever you're going to use in the middle, whether it be a watercolor pencil, actual watercolor, this outline will dissolve just enough without losing its form, like the Neo would. It holds its, like, I don't know if it has more oil in it. I'm not sure if it has, because it probably has more binder. But isn't that cool? So what I'm going to do, because this really gives me a fabulous idea, I'm going to sharpen this guy. And I recommend a crayon like this when you want to sharpen these. Don't use your knife. You can use an X-Acto knife, but these have like the extra hole. This one had a little cover that held the shavings, and I don't know what happened to it, but you can just go like that. I wouldn't recommend saving the shavings like I was talking about in my Neo 2 review. I don't know if these are really worth saving. You can, of course, using the methods I described in that review. Please check that out because it's awesome. Okay, so I still have that sharpened enough, so I gotta just keep going until I get it as sharp as I want. There you go. See? And again, you can shave those if you really want to. They'll dissolve about the same as if you were picking it up from a palette. What I'm going to do, though, since this has had a chance to dry while we were talking about this really cool thing, I'm going to outline this just a little bit. And I'm going to see what happens. We're going to do an experiment together. If you're still watching, and I hope you are, please like and subscribe and leave a comment. I'm going to outline this like as if I was almost using an oil pastel crayon. And that's something, if you want me to talk about that and wet media and all that, let me know in the comments, because I know a lot of stuff about that sort of thing. I'm very knowledgeable about like mixed media type deal. I'm pretty knowledgeable, I think. So I'm going to... And that's going to bleed a little, but that's okay. I want to see what happens. I'm so curious. That may mess this part up because it's the lighter section. It may. But I'm going to reapply my Neo 2 here because I sort of used it up. I'm going to... Oh, and these, by the way, watch this. Here we go. This is where you're really going to be floored. But look at that. Just instantly, boom. I didn't even have to... You see that? Maybe cut 2 times, and it's already... Look at that. It's already on it. Dude, it's almost instantaneous. This to me is that there is less binder in it, less filler, and more pigment. And that's why the iCrayons are harder to dissolve. They're still a good crayon, though. Don't get me wrong. For $25, $26 here in the U.S., $1 crayon. You know, it's $1 and some change for a crayon. Like I was saying at the beginning, you can't beat it. So, but look at that. It's just, you barely touch it, and boom, it's just gone. It's crazy. I am so interested to see how this works. Oh, and I've got way too much. That's another thing. You don't need to put down as much crayon. You don't need as much of the crayon, so your crayons will last a little bit longer than something like the Neo 2s would, for the fact that you don't need to use as much pigment to get the same results. So, you know, there are disadvantages and advantages, and you know, you have to decide what's right for you. That's why I'm doing this video, so you guys can understand the differences and decide what you want to do. And I can see here that it is dissolving a little bit. I am going to do a little bit of wet here, because not too much. I hesitate to do a lot, but I may have to a little bit here, just a little bit. Be careful where you're going. Watch where my brush is going. I'm not full on touching the edges, because it's gonna get hit with that water a little bit. The water is gonna make its way out to that edge, and I don't want it to full on develop, you know, develop the pigment, just a little bit. And then I'm going to do it up here instead of at the bottom, where I just kind of skirted toward it a little bit, because the water, my disc kind of is a little bit tilted this way. So I know that water's going to kind of flow down that way, but it's not going to do it up here. So I kind of have to hit it a little bit more with the brush at the top. And I'm just going to push this back a little bit with some of the other pigment. Again, if you guys want a video about using Neo 2s and type deal with other things, let me know. I would be more than happy to do that. And I'll probably go over these with colored pencils at some point. I may not, though. Now, I'm not going back into the pigment. I'm just letting it blend. But you see how much easier this is spreading around to versus the iCrayons? Sorry. Not rinsing my brush out this time, because I don't mind if these two colors, I want them to blend together anyway. But you see how much more vibrant it is than the iCrayons? I mean, I didn't get the level of darkness that I wanted out of that. I need like a night shade type. Night blue, I need that for there. I didn't get enough dark enough blue, honestly. They don't really have a blue that's as dark as like the night blue, which is another little ding maybe, but you know, that's what it is. Also, as you can see, that it lightened up quite a bit as it dried. Water soluble crayons, both the Neo 2 and the iCrayon, will both do that. Watercolors do it. Watercolor pencils, when they're activated, do it. Do you see how much that's just blending without me having to physically turn it like I did this one? It's doing it all by itself. I didn't need to put down nearly as much pigment. I mean, it's wild to me. I'm gonna grab this a little bit more and just drop it in like that. And then you kind of swirl it like that. Just a little, just to kind of move it around a little. If they both sharpen about the same, like with this type of deal. The iCrayon's a little harder to sharpen. It's a little harder, maybe, but not too bad. I'm going to see how different they can be. The Caran does come in open stock, if I didn't mention that, on Blick, and I think Amazon, but you're better off getting that from Blick. And the iCrayon does not. So there's that. However, price points, you know, like we discussed earlier, the initial investment is a little bit steeper, but you can get them in open stock. You see how much the difference between the two already? This is not bad. That's why I say these, for being $26, are not bad. And you can always go back over them, relayer them. Like, I'm gonna take my iCrayon. You can either go from the palette or go from the crayon. And I recommend, with the iCrayons, I recommend you scratching it out on a palette. I highly recommend that. It's no it's no different. Even the bars that they have, you're going to get a much more intense pickup. With the iCrayons, it's not as intense as it would be from the Neo. So that's why I just kind of put this back on here. I go back in with this, and I'm going to actually just get out all my colors here. Because they're so similar, you have to be careful that you don't mix them up. So if you get both and you have both, be careful. Go back over it, make sure you rinse your brush out, and just kind of go back over it. And we're going to talk about this when we're done here. But you don't want to rub it too hard, just gently. Just push. You see how I'm pushing? Just gently. And I'm squeezing the water out very gently. You don't want to push too hard. In this case, since I didn't get the depth I wanted, what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab a little bit of my black. I hate doing that, but I'm going to grab a little bit of their black. And so you can also see what their black looks like. But now that this is kind of wet, and squeeze a little bit more water here. You want to make sure it's thoroughly wet. Or it's not going to work. That's I'm watching this dry and I'm like, ooh. So, let's grab my white. Go back over that. You want to work quickly. When you're using watercolor brushes, especially like this, you really want to work quickly. Because especially when it's hot, like it has been the last few days. Oh my God, it's been like desert hot out here. I live in Maryland, and it's just been like desert hot. It's like, holy shiitake mushrooms, what's happening? Like, am I back in Barstow, or am I in, still in Maryland? It's just crazy. So I'm gonna grab that, and I let that sit for a bit, and that's why it's. Did you see that? Did you catch what I just did? That's how when it happens, if you get it quick enough, you could sometimes get it all. Okay, I'm gonna rinse my brush. And I'm going to go in with this black, and I'll let you see how up close how the black dissolves from the iCrayon. So, rinse my brush out. That's pretty. This was the most surprising one of all. You see how quick. This is almost how a Neo 2 dissolves, and it's super pigmented. This is probably my favorite. It absolutely blew my mind. I almost forgot about it. And it's granulating. I can tell that it's granulating because you see all the little, I don't know if my camera's picking it up, but can you see that? How it's granulating? It dissolved way quicker than a lot of the lighter colors did. This is probably the most pigmented granulated color in either set. And I believe I got this from the classic set. This is like Neo 2 level. Good. I wish the rest of them were like this, but this black is wildly good for being a budget pencil. Now this, I just want a little down here. I don't want too much. Just a little. Like, it's so, I don't know what pigment they use, but guys, it's just crazy to me. And I'm gonna go in just a little bit more here. I'm gonna go in a little bit there because that's my underside. You see how that's spreading pretty good too, even. Okay, I'm gonna go back in with some more of the iCrayon, this color. And I'm just going to push this back into, this is where this comes in handy, and I need some more. I just want to make sure I don't freaking pick up the Neo 2 by accident because I'm demonstrating the... Oh, you know what? I could show you guys. Hold on. This is the iCrayon. Here. I'm going to let you guys see this. Do you see how it's not dissolving? This is what I mean. That's why it's not worth. Do you see that? It's just not. It might as well be an oil pastel crayon. It's just not. Like, that's wild. It's doing it, but man, you see what I mean? Versus, say, a shaving from, where is it? From my Neos. Okay, where's my crap? Here, watch this. I'm gonna do a shaving. Just a little. I want you to see that. Well, that just continues to dissolve. Watch this. Look at that. Do you see the instant difference? I don't know. Look at that. Do you see how quickly that's dissolving? Look at that. It's just boom. Look at that. You see the wild difference between the two? It's crazy to me. See, it's still not dissolving. So these crayons do have their limitations, guys. They really do. However, they're not a horrendous crayon to play around with if you're just learning, especially, or you're on a tight budget. You know, I cannot actually say that enough. I wanted to see how this worked. And I'm wiping my brush repeatedly because I want it to, I want to push this back into the shadows. You see that? It's just, oh my God. It kind of floors me, honestly. Let that set for a second. You have to. Look at that, it's still not dissolved. And that one dissolved in like, what, 2 seconds? So that's just something to consider when you're buying these. But it dissolves pretty quickly if you scratch it on the palette. That is my best recommendation for you. If you get these iCrayons, scratch it on the palette and pick it up from there. So I have these from the Neo 2s. Again, from the classic set. I think the Europe set is one of those, the colors are very, they're definitely very urban, very nature-like, very architectural. So that's a set that I'm not sure I don't know how much I would use it. If I'm doing landscapes, maybe. But I'm kind of favoring the classic set right now, to be honest. So I'm going to test the other side of this. Since this is dry, I tested this side with the Neos, so I'm going to test this side with the iCrayon. Gray, white, and then just black. And this is a warm black to me, but I'm still shocked at how easily this, of all the crayons, this is probably the easiest one to blend. It was crazy to me. Oh, this crayon just dissolved in a nanosecond. It just kind of floors me. So I got my black, and then got my gray. I'm going to use a lot of that one, so that's why I have a lot laid down, and then I have my white. The white's not bad, actually. It's not horrendous. I don't hate it. So, yeah, please ignore that. Okay, so I'm going to turn this to the side a little. I apologize if that bothers somebody, but I have visual issues, and it just needs to be this way. So I truly hope it doesn't bother you. So we're going to test the other side of this that I lined with that iCrayon and see if it holds like that did. Look at that. Look at that. It barely blended in. Look at that. That's amazing. So I'm going to get these. Whoops. Still had a little red in that. And we'll let those activate for a second. That's kind of how you need to do it. Letting it settle. It does take longer to activate. So it should be about ready. And I'm also gonna pre-wet this, although I try not to do that too much on mixed media. And I'm gonna go almost to the edge there, but not 100%. I don't know if my camera's picking it up. There's a thin line right there. That way, if it bleeds over, it won't like full on like hit it. It'll hit it gently. So that's kind of why I did that. I want to see if it can take a light bumping like that and not just bleed all over the place. Start with our white. Yeah, I know, I'm brave, right? It's not bleeding too much either. Did you see how that's creeping up? Part of that's how my table is a little unlevel. I'm gonna grab from my light gray. And this is normally way more water than I add, typically. But in this case, I need a lot of free flow. When you're trying to make silver this way, you need a lot of free flow. So that it requires a little bit extra water. I'm trying not to hit those lines too hard. Just maybe gently touching on them, because I want to reduce that bleeding. So far it's holding. And I left the black to the end. I was like, it's definitely a granulating black. This is the point where I'm going to grab my regular mixed media brush, because I've got so much water on there that if I keep adding water, which that water brush will do, it's going to overwhelm the paper. So when you're using these kinds of brushes, and bear in mind that it's also starting to warp a little, so if you don't have it taped down, bear in mind whether you're using the iCrayon or not, it will kind of tend to warp a little bit. And if you get to too much water like that, just grab for a regular brush, have one handy, and just grab for that. So far, the line's holding. It's holding. It's holding. Do you see what's starting to happen though here? You won't see it till it's dry. And I'm moving this all liberally around. And I'm only going all the way just barely to the line. Oh my gosh, it's holding. I'm dropping a little in toward the bottom. My board to help hold it down. I'm gonna dab my brush here. I'm really testing that edge that I used the iCrayon on. And you see how well the iCrayon is doing for this type of work. I'm actually pretty surprised that these are, because the others I've used in this way in the past, when playing around with it, didn't do this well. Some of the brighter colors, like, you know, your traditional blues and reds and all that. This one's actually blending pretty well. All right, so we have our silver from the iCrayon, and I think it went pretty well. Honestly, I like it. So it blended very nice, and as you can see, fairly evenly. So not too bad. So let's try the Neo 2 now. Let's go for the fun one. I mean, the iCrayon did really well, I think. So let's do our Neo. I may or may not use that one, I'm not sure, but it's white, silver gray, and light gray, and then black, of course. And I think I'm going to use a regular brush this time. So I'm going to start with my mid, I think, believe it or not. And I noticed I did not pre-wet it. I wanted to see how this blends without it. I knew that the iCrayon wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't be. It's not pigmented enough. It doesn't blend quite enough. But I wanted to see if with the Neo 2 was strong enough on its own merit to handle that much being messed with without changing too much. So without having the water lay down first to help it sort of bounce around. I knew that the iCrayon would need the extra water, but I think the Neo 2s can handle it. Pre-wet it. It's really important when you're doing gold and silver and you're using any kind of wet media to pre-wet in this case, because it helps you really want wet to me for the best quality of blending here. For this application for making silver and gold, I highly recommend wet and wet. So, now that we've let this dry, or I've dried it, I'm going to show you. All you have to do when it peels like that is just gently scrape it with your finger. Sometimes it sticks a little bit, or you could use a little nail file, gentle nail file, but not the metal kind. And just kind of go like that. Once it's completely dry. In my iCrayon lines, I did it over here and I did it a little here, and it's held up really well. But just scrape it like that. It's no big deal. And if you want to go back over it, you can. I think they both behaved the iCrayon and the Neo 2 actually both did very well making silver, picking up from the palette. So basically my final thoughts are this. The iCrayon is, for its price point, $13 and $26, are a good price point. They are good value for that money. You get 20. It's $1 crayon essentially. So I think they're worth it, but they do have their limitations. To me, I would never write with them directly on an image unless I was doing it like this little demonstration we had with the red and the silver. And as you can see, the lines held up. They didn't bleed too much, which tells you how much filler's in it, for one thing. But it may have a tad more oil in it. So, and for a water silver crayon, it has to have a little at least, or it's just not going to hold together. So it held up pretty well. And I think that they're definitely worth what they're charging. You are going to get your money's worth. Just pick them up from the palette. You can pick them up from the crayon, but you're not going to get the same results as you would with the Neo 2s. You're going to have to work a little bit harder to get the crayon to be saturated enough on your brush like you would a Neo 2 almost instantly. So that's a drawback. And I wouldn't recommend like coloring a whole image with it. I don't think that, unless you pick it up from a palette. To me, that is your best option. And the way to get the cleanest lay down, because you saw what happened here. So the Neo 2s are more expensive, but again, they're available in open stock. So once you initially lay out your money for them, you'll never have to buy them unless you're trying to get the, 50th anniversary set. Sets. Sorry. You won't have to really buy anything more than what you need as you need it. With the iCrayons, you would have to buy the whole set again, which in itself isn't, to me, a big deal at $26. Yeah, at least here in the States. I would be willing to do that. It wouldn't be, I'd have extra crayons to play around with. I mean, you can never, these things are a miracle thing to play with. There's just so much, there's so many uses for them. They're so much fun. The Neo 2s do blend and dilute and dissolve way faster, way easier. And they're very much more pigmented, except for that black in the iCrayon. Woof. Anyway, I would definitely recommend the iCrayon, especially if you're on a budget. And you don't have the initial outlay. Maybe you can't get a hold of Klarna, which is like Etsy uses Klarna a lot. To help people pay over time. If you don't have something like that, and your budget is really tight, the iCrayon is 100% worth it. Just take my advice when it comes to how to use them. I really feel like they have you'll have the best results. With the Neo 2s, well, what can be said about those? They are amazing. So if you have the money and can afford the initial outlay, one way or the other, through payments or not, I would highly suggest the Neo 2s. If you can manage it financially. But if you can't, the iCrayons are an equally good substitute. So I know this was a long video. I hope you stayed with me to the end, and if you did, please consider liking and sharing and subscribing. It really helps me out a lot, and I'm trying, my goal is to get to 1,000 subs so that I can monetize. It might not be a lot, but hey, it's groceries and everything these days. So, and I love what I do. So, it's fun for me. So with that said, I don't have the ability to put like Amazon links. I'm not an affiliate yet. I don't have enough subs. So that's one way you can help me, is by subbing and watching the whole video. I would really, truly appreciate it. And if you got any value out of this, let me know. I love comments, feedback. I love to hear what you guys have to say. Just be nice. Don't roast me too hard. With that said, I love you all. If you have any questions, DM me on Sherry's Creations, which is where I post links to my new video. And I hope you all have a blessed one. Please be kind to each other. The world is a really bad place right now, and just be kind to each other. Let's give each other some grace. Can we? Thanks, guys.